Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have our good friend Stefan with us. I think that Stefan and I met through Alignable or something, some type of networking
Yeah,
meeting thing.
yeah.
So Stefan, why don't you go ahead and give a brief introduction to who you are, what you do, just so everyone knows. He is a Harvard graduate and he wears this like a badge of honor. So if you hear any banter back and forth about Ivy Leagues versus not Ivy League schools. Um, just be prepared.
Yeah.
Stefan.
Why did I think that you were going to bring that up? And today, as this podcast is being recorded, is Women's Heart Health Day. Did you know that?
I did
And
not
that
know that.
yeah, you're not up on that, but I am because I'm one of these Renaissance men who can, just I can look outside my comfort zone. And today I got notification, please wear red. So I do have a little bit of red here. On my sweatshirt to honor Women's Heart Health Day because it is a very, very important. It's an important data point. That's probably not a good way of putting it, but it's important that we understand health from a lot of different perspectives, and women's health obviously is critical. And in a number of parts of the world, women's health is not taken as seriously as it should be, and so we need to honor that. So that's just my that has nothing to do with what I do, but I just thought I'd bring that up.
Just the Stefan
Okay,
2 cents that we always expect
it's
to
my two
happen.
cents. Yeah, it's my 2 cents. It's not exactly worth 2 cents these days because of inflation, but what are you going to do? So my background and career has been all over the map. You got to think of my career as kind of like one of those what do you call it? Kaleidoscopes, right? Just all over and I fell into every role that I've ever had. Like somebody was asking me last week, did you ever use a resume to get a position? And my answer was no, I never did. What happened was I would be having a phone conversation or I'd meet somebody and we'd be having dinner, and right in the middle of dinner, they'd say, we could really use somebody like you in this position in our company. Or I know somebody you need to talk to because they would be incredibly thankful to have met you and they'd be able to, work with you and you'd solve their problems. And that's how it happened. That's how every one of my positions has happened. And I guess it's just the way the universe has worked. Today, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ampresta. We are a data intelligence as a service company. We just came up with that moniker just this week, and I'm really excited about it because nobody knows what it is, and that's good. You have to ask us more questions about it. But data intelligence as a service enables us to isolate specific problems that are going on in the world, like climate change, or in the areas of human performance, which you and Emily know very well, how we are looking at the future workforce and what does that look like and how is it going to behave and where is work going to be done in the world? Because since the pandemic, a lot of people have chosen a work-life balance that's really different. They're asking questions like, well, do I want to live in a city? Do I want to live in the rural area? Do I want to be part of a big team? Do I want to be part of a small team? What am I looking for in terms of my future? Is it important for me to spend more time with my kids? Um, so what we do is we provide data intelligence as a service and we monetize that data and that intelligence to tell C-suite leaders invest in this strategy because you're going to have a payback, or don't invest in this strategy because you will lose money off this and you're already losing money and it's going to get worse, not better. And then we have a middle lane in which we tell C-suite leaders, okay, if you do want to invest in a human performance strategy, you got to clean up your culture because right now it's a mess. It's a toxic mess, and there are real problems. And this is what we've come up with. And oh, by the way, it's costing you in these areas. It's costing you in hiring, training, engagement, all of these areas, all of which I know you and Emily know about. So we have three lanes, three swim lanes that we live in. Um, all of our all of our components in our core engine are focused on not only financially incentivizing C-suite leaders, but also showing them what the future looks like. So we have some predictive capability that we're going to be building in over the course of the next 2 years, which will enable leaders to really sit back and go, huh, all right, if I substitute this factor for this factor, if I change this condition, what will happen? And so that's our goal in the next 2 years, is to be able to give them that capability so that they can respond to changing geopolitical conditions, changing economic conditions, changing migration, the migratory, not the migratory, that's for birds. Um, the changing patterns of where people want to live and work and how they want to work and what this is going to do for our planet. What are going to be the demands on water, food, housing? All of that is going to come into play. And we want to be at the forefront of that.
Go ahead,
Wow,
Emily.
that's amazing. I'm just sitting over
Well,
here. I'm like,
Jesus, don't
yes,
be
yes,
speechless. Ask a
yes.
damn question, for crying out loud. Don't just sit there going, "Oh my
I'm
God, I wasn't
processing it.
expecting that."
That's a lot. Like that's
Well,
It's
you
really
asked for you said, why don't you tell us about your life and about what you're doing in Ampresta? So I opened up. What do you want me to do? Okay, yes, Emily.
so yeah. Let's talk about like how COVID changed, and now leaders get to change their perspective. This seems to be a hot topic because during COVID, everyone was kind of working remote, and now we've all seen the government trying to push everyone to go back into the office, and just around that, what kind of impact do you feel like leaders, or what kind of data can they use to determine, do we keep them online or do we bring them back into the office?
Well, I live right outside of Boston, and last year, a number of companies got together and said, we're sick and tired of this whole remote business. You're coming back to work. But the irony in all of that is that most of the companies had abandoned their downtown offices and had not come back. So they were having to come back in to office space, which, by the way, the rents went up, way up, right? So from a cost perspective, they had to sit there and say, does it really make a difference to have 10 or 15 people or 20 people come back in, um, as opposed to letting them work from home if we have to pay for this space, which now is up to $40 per square foot or $45 per square foot. I mean, it's really gotten expensive. Um, so that's been one issue, is trying to create some form of community and sort of getting a handle on how people are doing their jobs. What is their productivity? What is their output? And what hasn't been measured, I don't think, is what happened pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. So the pandemic disrupted everything, obviously, but lost in all of that was the idea of, well, have we been measuring productivity in ways that are good for our firm? We didn't do it prior to the pandemic. Now all of a sudden we got to do it to figure out, are we even on track? Have we lost our way? Like, are we just sort of floundering here and we could be doing 10% better, 20% better, 30% better? And there really isn't sort of any kind of mechanism or model, that people are using to explore that. They're kind of sort of saying, well, the pandemic is now the marker. And so everything we do from here on in is going to be based on where we were at the pandemic and where we are now going forward. Um, So that's been an issue, and a lot of people here, and we are also having an outmigration of people leaving Massachusetts because salaries are not keeping up with rent, with mortgages, mortgage rates. Food is more expensive, gas is more expensive. We've become either the second or third most expensive state to live in the United States. And for a number of young people, because we have a number of fine universities here in Massachusetts, which I won't name, but that's all right. These young people are now finding that they have one of two options. Either they live at home with their family, which is not a great option. Two, they have to crowd into a second floor walk up with four of their friends and basically sleep wherever they can because they can't afford it. So if they want a job here in Massachusetts and specifically in Boston, that's what they're looking at. And I think some employers are looking at that and saying, well, if you really want to stay here, you got to come to work and you got to come into the office. Companies like Fidelity, Mass Mutual, um, from what I've been able to gather, most of the people are back. You know, some are still working from home, most are back. But a lot of other businesses, I walked through downtown Boston last week. I was shocked at how quiet it was and how little foot traffic there was. Our transit system is maybe half what it was before the pandemic. So there's been a big shift, and this is putting extreme pressure on landlords, and it remains to be seen. We're a sanctuary city, so the governor wants to use the empty office space for migrants and immigrants. And there's a lot of, push and pull going on. So I'd say right now, people are leaning towards getting people back into the office, but they are also realizing talent, really great talent, is scarce because it's leaving the state and it's saying, I can work from someplace a lot cheaper with a better quality of life, and maybe I'm not making as much money, but I'm saving. I at least I can
Yeah.
make ends meet. So
Yeah. It's not necessarily that the talent is scarce. It's just the talent wants it or needs, right, things to look in a certain way for them. So it's fiscally, I can't even say responsible at this point. So it's fiscally manageable for them to do what they need to do. But I'd love to take it back to the point that you were making earlier about productivity
yep.
and measuring productivity, because I think this is an incredibly interesting conversation that people get to have. Um, because I can tell you that when I was in automotive manufacturing, like I would often work 10+ hour days, but there were huge gaps in the day where I wasn't doing things, right? It's like meeting after meeting after meeting, and then you just kind of need an opportunity to take a break. So I think it's very interesting, and there's another point that I want to layer in too. But I think it's interesting to look at productivity in terms of, because my personal opinion on productivity is like, do you have KPIs? Yes or no? If you have KPIs, are you meeting your targets? Yes or no? If you're meeting your targets, then to me, you're productive. So, what does productivity really mean? And then, are we also considering the way people work and the way people are built and function? Because there are some people that can just sit through 8 hours and just hammer a bunch of stuff out, right? And there are some people that they're not built that way. I'm one of those people. So, but then if we also look at other countries, have you looked at any other countries and data from other countries? Because it's either Sweden or Switzerland, I don't remember which, but they only have 6 hour workdays because studies have proven that past 6 hours, you are no longer productive. So if people are
Yeah.
expecting 10, 12, 14 hours, what are you actually getting past 6 hours? So I think that's an interesting conversation to have about productivity. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, having two Europeans on my team, I can tell you that Europeans look at a work-life balance far different than we do here in America. and they
Hmm.
pay a lot of attention to it. And to them, the workplace culture, the culture overall, drives everything. So if you were to put KPIs and numbers to a pure European company, they might look at you going, yeah, I don't know. That's not going to cut it for the way, because they're very family centric.
Oh, I would disagree with that point though. Like
You
I
would?
agree that they are very family centric, but I would disagree with the point of if you would put KPIs and KPI centric into a like a foreign company that they would be like, oh, that doesn't really work. I worked for a French owned, French
Well,
based company, and that's those KPIs were the drivers.
well, okay. So let me qualify it by saying you're right. You're right. That's okay.
Team
Fair,
Purdue gets one over here.
fair point. Fair point. Julie and Emily score one for the home team. Okay. So that's fair because BNP Paribas, which is a French-based company, does have KPIs, right? For all, they have to meet certain, yes, absolutely. But there are other small to mid-sized companies where I think in Europe, those kind of measurements, and where I'm going with this is here in America, we very much put the human being up against those KPIs for very good reasons. Like both of you are out of manufacturing. If certain cars are not produced per month, that's a problem because there are orders waiting for those automobiles. Or if parts aren't delivered at a certain time, then whoever's in charge of procurement is going to hear about it because they're going to say, what's wrong with your supply chain? Why aren't you having oversight on this? Why wasn't this delivery taken? Well, we had a problem with, our logistics, our shipping, from the warehouse to the assembly line. Well, fix it. Don't just, give me an excuse. Fix the damn thing. So in those areas, in that sense, that's very true, but I will give you a personal story. I rode a train cross Canada, and I happened to share a car with the third employee ever hired at Rolls-Royce, who knew Sir Henry Royce personally. And he gave me a fascinating story about Rolls-Royce, and he said, attention to detail drove the company. So Sir Henry Royce didn't care if the car came late. The car had to be down to the chrome, down to the signature logo. It had to be perfect. So they'd wait to make sure that that was delivered. Why? Because their customers were paying a premium for that. So I would argue that there are certain instances where craftspeople, where there's a certain amount of craftsmanship that cannot be married to KPIs. I also think certain KPIs are dehumanizing. And I think what
Hold
the
on, hold on. Let's go back to that last point because I agree with you. Certain KPIs are really fucking dehumanizing. So I'm excited to dive into
you
that
can
one.
swear on a podcast.
You've been doing it the entire time, sir. Don't even act
Oh,
like it.
It's
And
our
you've spoken
podcast.
and you've
that's true.
spoken
It's
to
your
us
podcast. You can do
how
whatever
many
you want
times?
with it. Yeah.
Um, so your previous point of what was it about KPIs kind of like
KPIs being
no
Dehuman.
dehumanizing.
before that.
Oh, that certain KPIs couldn't be applied because there was craftsmanship that was applied that didn't necessarily align with a traditional KPI. In other words, here in America, we align humans to KPIs and we expect delivery on those KPIs. In Europe, to me anyway, the interactions that I've had with Europeans it's a different mindset. It really is. They don't think about those numbers. They think about the quality. They think about what they're producing for their customer. Because their customer's sitting there and saying, hey, I'm paying a premium for this. I'm going to get that premium.
Yeah, I
And
think
they,
it's definitely different if you're paying a premium, right?
right.
Like if you're buying a Rolls Royce, you're paying premium. You want what you pay for. But if you're purchasing something that's, I don't know if run of the mill is necessarily the right phrasing or terminology, but if you're If you're purchasing a Toyota or if you're purchasing something that's like, mass production, completely different story, right?
Well, a stapler, a pair of
Yep.
scissors,
Hmm.
right? Those are just everyday household items. So that's a little different. That doesn't require it because that can be put on an assembly line. That can be molded. There are certain things that can be built in to the process. And both of you know more about this than I do, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, they're
It could
just
be
certain.
fun.
Yeah, no, it would be fun, wouldn't it? You'd enjoy it, but I'm not going to give you that pleasure. Uh, But there are certain items that can be molded and built and produced out the door, bing, right? There's 10 steps or 12 steps or 15 steps, and everybody knows them by heart, by like the back of your hand. But there are other industries where that isn't the case, where there are premiums built in for that kind of quality and attention to detail. And so, and that's something that I think Europeans take far more seriously than we do here in America. I just do.
I would say quality definitely is a distinctive factor for things like that.
I think we got off
Um,
topic though.
I don't think we got off topic.
No? All right.
Huh.
All right. Just checking.
Let's talk about the dehumanizing KPIs. Let's shift to that because this is a fun conversation.
The dehumanizing KPIs.
Like which KPIs specifically, or what KPIs would you consider to be dehumanizing?
So I'm going to give you the stock answer I give everyone, and that is it depends on your mindset. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
If I'm working in sales, I'm all about numbers. If I'm working in finance, I'm all about numbers. That's all I do. I live numbers. So I'm not necessarily being innovative. I'm not necessarily being creative. I'm not being strategic, a little bit in selling. I can be strategic in selling. But I know that at the end of the quarter, I have to meet a quota. I absolutely do. I mean, that's it. The quota is I've got to close 50, 100K sales, let's say. And so that's my number. I know that going in, and I know what I have to do, and I've got my lead gen list and all that. Where some numbers get dehumanizing, I think, is more on the creative, strategic, innovative side, where you're more conceptual, where you're taking a concept and you're trying to work it through and build something that you deliver to market. Or if you're in a partnership role, if you're building partnerships to expand the footprint of the company, but you don't necessarily know how much that partnership is going to deliver for you in terms of either sales, um, open doors to investment if you need it, open doors to other partnerships, which could be key for materials or, things like that. And so I think that there are just some areas in a company where putting KPIs can be a little dehumanizing because what it does is it says, I'm going to measure whether or not your intelligence is good enough for this company. And I don't like that. I think that that goes to a person's DNA, and I think a person's DNA is untouchable. It's hands off. You can't really mess with a person's ability to think critically and creatively. I had an English, oh, now see if I go this direction. I'm
You're gonna
going to
date
bring up
yourself?
the Harvard. I'm going to bring up the
Oh,
Harvard.
let's do it.
Oh, let's do it. Okay. Well, so I had a professor at an Ivy League institution that I attended that when I had dinner with her,
And which, I'm sorry, did you say which Ivy League school was it?
Harvard, you got it? The big H, the Crimson. So we were having dinner one night and she said, why do you think that English is a major at this school or any school? And I sort of leaned back in my chair and I said, to write and to communicate. I mean, isn't that what we're doing? We're reading, we're writing papers, we're communicating ideas, we're communicating concepts. She said, that's what most people think, but that's not what an English major is all about. That's not what we train you for. We train you to think critically. And critical thinking, she said, will be the most important asset you will take into your professional life because it will come up in so many different situations that you can't even imagine today. And she said, I want you to always remember that we are training you to think critically in ways that other people who don't take English or don't, even come near the department, they're going to miss out on. They're not going to get that same, because if you think about it, finance, you're trained, and I have an MBA. Finance, you're trained in certain methodologies, right? Um, Accounting, all the different ratios. They are standards. They're standards that we've used for years and years and years and years. Manufacturing, assembly line production has a certain blueprint. You follow that blueprint, you can use computer technology, you can use upgraded software. Hell, you can even use artificial intelligence now, right? We know that these technologies are coming in, but the end game is to produce the product. You start in A and you go to Z. But she said with English, it's a lot different. She said, we're training you to think critically so that in any situation you will be prepared. You may not know the answer. You probably won't know the answer, but you'll know what to do to get the answer. And she said that's the difference between how some people in a company, and you want to know what dehumanizing is? Dehumanizing is when a person says, I was just laid off from my company and I feel like I was treated like a widget. Like the entire time, all I was a widget. I was plugged in. Nobody bothered to ask me, how are things going at home? Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling challenged? Are you feeling motivated? Are you feeling pushed to be better? What can we do for you that can draw out more that what you have to offer this company? Because we think you're here, but we think you could be up here. So what can we do to get you there? That's why
So
organizations, go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to stop right there and just say we're going to talk a little bit more about the leaders checking in on their team. I just made a post this morning about the pizza, like the pizza party. And, oh, we're going to throw you a pizza party. I don't want a pizza party. I want a day off, right? So it comes back to the manager and the leader of like knowing what's making them click and how many of the leaders today do not understand how their team operates. And so they don't even know if their team is at 20% capacity or 200% capacity because they don't have
Exactly.
that awareness.
They don't.
Yeah. And I think from a KPI standpoint, I think any KPI can be dehumanizing. And the reason why I say that is because I can't tell you the number of times I was given KPIs. I was almost always given metrics that were measurable, right? You have to hit this scrap number, you have to hit this efficiency target, or you have to blah, 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 whatever, right? But it's dehumanizing to be given a target because when I was a manager, we had three categories we could get bonus on. If one of them overall plant target, I'm like, well, fuck, I only control half the plant, or I only control a third of the plant. So like, fuck A, right? Like I could bust my ass, and my people could bust their ass all year long, all quarter long, all whatever long, right? But if someone in purchasing fucks up a huge deal that we can't deliver on the production floor, it doesn't fucking matter, right? I'm like, so that's not even an indicator that I give a fuck about because if I'm staying in my lane, I can hit my targets, right? But if you're giving me something it's not dependent upon me and my team and my success and like my personal drivers, right? Like things I can control, you might as well not even fucking give it to me.
Their HBR just came out. That's Harvard Business Review, by the way.
Is
Uh,
it? Is that what that's good for?
that's what that stands for. I know that you've been waiting for me to tell you that. Harvard Business Review just came out with a fascinating article. They've been doing research over the last 10 years. So this is pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, on leaders and their teams. they found a disturbing close to 35% of leaders are now sabotaging their teams because they feel that certain members of their teams are more talented and they don't want these people rising in the ranks and making them look bad. So even if KPIs weren't a part of the equation, we now go to the human part and we
Mhm.
now go to emotional intelligence. We go to all of those squishy factors which can get into the way, get in the way of actual productivity. So put aside the logistics for a second. You know, if you didn't get the materials you needed, you're at a standstill. You've got to sit there and wait day, week, right? You're going to miss your KPI, but somebody screwed up. Somebody in logistics and procurement screwed up, and the shipment didn't come through. The weather was bad. Truck broke down. Something happened. Okay,
Yep.
fine.
All of these are fabulous factors that work against
They're fab, right.
you.
But what if it's somebody who is manipulating their team in a way, and it's silent manipulation. It's kind of like the quiet quitting that went on shortly after the pandemic when people just said, yeah, now that I see what my company's really like this pandemic kind of opened the door, and now I see who they really are as human beings.
Mhm.
I'm not that crazy about putting in, 80-hour work weeks anymore. I don't really feel like doing that. And guess what? I'm at home. So I don't have to put in 80-hour work weeks. I could, I could tell my kids, hey, go watch TV for 6 hours and I need to work. Not so great for the kids. And it's not great for you. But now what's happening is when you have this active sort of suppression of your team, then it becomes a house of cards and it can fall apart. And this is what this study showed, and they said it's increasing, it's getting worse, and it's all being driven by the fact that leaders are looking at their team in ways that they didn't beforehand, and they're starting to get scared. They're starting to get,
Let's not call those people leaders. Shall we start there? Like those are not leaders.
well, they're not leaders in the true sense, but from a title perspective, they are.
From a title perspective, they're a manager.
Okay, they're a manager.
They're a manager. And
Okay.
I'm sure Emily has this experience too, but I've had so many people before because I was in a training role before, right? And so part of that role was like we would do surveys for the whole entire facility and say, hey, like what kind of classes do you want to take? What kind outside of core trainings that you have to have because the company makes you have them? Like what shit are you interested in? What do you want to actually learn? And there were plenty of people that were like, ooh, I would love to do this, or I would like to be a supervisor one day, or I would like to do this. And then
Yeah.
their supervisor or their manager would be like, I don't think that they can cut it in this role. How the fuck do you know that? Like, who the fuck are you to say what they can and cannot do? Like, if you're putting someone in a mundane position and in a mundane role that they don't really give two shits about, like, if you put my ass on an assembly line, could I rock it for a while? Sure, I could, but then I'd be bored as fuck. And I would be like, this is not, it's not stimulating. It doesn't matter. It's not driving me for anything. Right. And so probably someone would have said that about me if my ass was on an assembly line day in and day out, right? So if you're not being motivated to what is motivational for you, other people might look at you and be like, they don't have what it takes. But how do you know?
But you don't. But you don't. And but you're asking these managers, again, to think critically, to think outside of their comfort zone, to be more expansive and put themselves in the other person's shoe. That's not what they're wired to do. They're wired to do one thing and one thing only. And that is you have a team, you make sure that they produce X number of whatever, and it gets out, and that's it. We don't want you thinking. We don't want you creating. We don't want you sitting back thinking, I wonder if my team could produce 20% more. What would I have to do to get there? Maybe I should ask them. Maybe I should have a sit down with some pizza, maybe not some pizza. How about some brownies and scotch? that might be interesting.
For some
But
people, that's a great driver.
it is. Um, in other words, and Norman Wolfe, who's an author and a friend of mine who's written several.
Also a Harvard graduate.
I don't know if Norman went to Harvard. I'm not sure. I'll check in on that and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Um, he has spoken about the living organization and organizations that don't fit that. The living organization, he says, is constantly asking questions. How are we evolving? How are we growing? Are we serving our people as well as our customers? Are we delivering value, not just for our customers, but for the people that work for us? And how do we know all this? What systems do we have in place to go get that information, get that data? And he said in his career, we were just having a conversation the other day, and he said, I can't tell you the number of CEOs that come back to me after going through my program, the Living Organization, and they are embarrassed to say how poor they are as leaders because they fail in all of these check boxes are ticked on what not to do. And they're sitting there going, geez, I didn't think I was this bad, but God, I am. Like, I'm really missing the boat. And he has data actually that from these companies, the kind of a before and after. And he said the minimum productivity bump is between 30 and 50%. That's minimum. That's if they're just doing, the 6 or 8 things that Norman suggests.
Hmm.
So
Not shocked. Not shocked. So what do you do differently in your organization? Like you have people that work for you, right? So what do you do differently? How do you inspire them? How do
well,
you lead them?
I thought a lot about this before starting Ampresta, and I took all of my combined experiences and I wrote down what I didn't like about those experiences, what I felt didn't work. And I made a conscious point of saying, we're not going to do that. If I start a company, we're not going to do these things. So I need to find people who are of the same mindset, who can catalog what didn't work for them and what they would have rather have done. What if I were in that position, what would I have done? And out of that came my team, my leadership team, and they wrote the operating principles for the company. I didn't. And by the way, um, it was 3 women who wrote the operating principles, and they did all the editing, fact checking, everything. They did everything. Like I gave it to them and I said, write this as if it was your company. It is. It is your company. But write it in a way that you're looking ahead 5 years from now, and you've got a team, you've got a department. How do you want it to function? What do you want to be the values? What do you want people to know about Ampresta? What do you want them to understand about who we are? And not just what we produce, not the value, not the technology, not the intelligence, not our, ability to differentiate ourselves from other SaaS-based businesses, but what is it? What will be our differentiator as a company? And they wrote 14 operating principles, and the men in the company all said, okay, good to go. We're good. Why are you laughing? I think, when I tell people about it, I say, I'm just giving you a hard time. But when I tell people about it, investors have asked me, what is one of your differentiators? And I say, our culture. The culture of Ampresta is what's going to carry us to success because it is not based on one person's ideology. It is based on the combined experiences of what not to do and where we want to be going forward in this period, in this time period, where we have a lot of upheaval, a lot of uncertainty. We have multi generations that have different views, but there's one aim here. And the aim is to make our planet healthier and to create human performance in a way to create human performance strategies in a way that are truly humanistic and that blend well with technology.
All of that. All of
That
that.
I think
that's
we're just smiling because this is not a vantage point or um maybe help me with the words. Like this is
no,
just
I'm not going to
not
help you with the
something.
word. You come up
I
with
said
it.
Emily, not Stefan.
Oh,
No, I think like it's one, it's refreshing to hear that someone else is doing this type of work in a different way, and to know that there's companies and leaders out there that are starting to shift to make that alignment and to have the open mind, like I'm gonna keep repeating that because we tend to be so closed-minded and not think outside of the box and think about what don't I want to create, and then make sure that we create that, and how do we create that. So it's really refreshing to hear.
well, thank you. Well, I do believe, it's funny too, because uh, some investors have turned away from us because we have female co-founders, which is interesting. Um, but some have resonated with it. Some have said, that is a differentiator. And I think, in fact, it's one of the reasons why we are in contention right now for a slot in a very important accelerator, an international accelerator program, which, if we get in, is going to change our scope. It's going to change everything for us. And I just had the final interview, and one of the questions that was asked was, "What is your differentiator?" And I said, "It's really simple. It's all of the founders, the pictures that you see, they were on the bottom of the Zoom panel. I said, look at them. They're not all from this country. They're from different countries. They're different ages. They have different views. And together we've joined as a group because there are two really salient, boy, that's a big word. There are two salient issues that we feel are critical to the
It's a
future.
Harvard word.
It is a hard. It's used a lot. Oh, I thought it was overused by my professors, but who am I to tell them? There are two salient areas, and I just talked about climate, because if we don't solve our climate problems, they're going to get worse, and there's a ripple effect. But it's the human performance, which, interestingly enough, I pushed back on when we first tackled this. I said, I don't know that if we monetize it, is it dehumanizing to do it? Are we going to encroach on a person's ability to learn and grow and develop within an organization? Are we going to stop that? Are we going to impede that? And I even had one of my friends, when she looked at what we were doing, say to me, aren't you worried that you're going to put people out of work? Like, isn't that counter to what you're trying to do? And I said, yeah, but we've got guardrails in place. Like, we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen. So those are the two areas. And I said to the interviewer, I said, this is what we're staking everything on, because if we don't stake it on ourselves, then what bet are we making? We're going to make a bet on the technology? Who the hell cares? Anybody can pull the technology off the shelf. That's not a differentiator. Is it going to be in the UX UI? Maybe a little bit, not that much, not that much, but it will be a differentiator if we act and deliver on everything we say we're going to deliver in a manner that engages people to come to us and say, what's next? What are you going to do to tackle this? What are you going to do to tackle this? How far will you go? How far will you push this to be even better than you are today? And that's what I tell my team. Don't settle on today. Push for tomorrow. Be
True,
happy
mic
with what
drop.
be happy with what you did today. Give yourself a pat on the back. Have a brownie and a scotch. It's really good. Um,
Together, of course.
Celebrate. Yeah, celebrate it. But know and understand that as soon as this day passes, the next day comes, and there's going to be another challenge. And there's going to be another query. There's going to be somebody coming along saying, I don't believe you can do what you're doing. I don't think that you guys have anything worthwhile. It's how we stand up to that and how we answer that that's going to define us as a company.
I love this. I love this.
That's
And
the
I also think
perfect
this is,
wrap up.
it is the perfect wrap up because
But
it's like, go ahead.
I got some rapid fire questions for him before we
Oh,
wrap it up.
this is not usual, but okay, let's do it.
Oh, I like rapid fire.
You like rapid fire? Okay, the
I
first
do.
thing that comes to your mind, just spit out the answer.
Good. Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Book or TV?
Book.
Cookies or cake?
Cake.
Purdue or Harvard?
Harvard. Jesus, what? Are you kidding me? Is there any doubt? Oh my God. Okay, kick our ass in basketball. So what? I don't care.
And with that, I have no further questions.
I knew it. I absolutely knew. Why am I not surprised that
You
that was
know,
going to come up?
interesting enough, though, my son, who is 15, Harvard is on his list to attend to go to college too. That's one of his uh, schools that he wants to go to. So I shouldn't say a whole lot about Harvard.
Yeah, and you know what? You should be extra nice to me because every person I've written a recommendation letter for has gotten in. Yes.
Wow.
Well,
Yes.
I'll send you
So
some brownie and scotch. Don't
you
worry.
just keep that in mind, Emily. You just keep that in mind the next time your son brings it up. Gee, Mom, I really wish we could find a way into if there was only somebody you knew. Yeah, who do I know who would write? Oh, can't ask Stefan. We've been
I
harassed.
mean, we know a couple people who went to Harvard, so
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. I don't have to be the one. I'm just saying, I've had four friends come to me. I've
perfect
had
track
four friends
record.
come to me asking me to write recommendation letters for their kids, and all four were accepted. Two didn't go, interestingly enough. Two did not go. Their mistake, but what can I say, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So
No
thank you so
further,
much for your
no
time.
further
You're
And
questions.
thank
welcome.
you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
This
No
is
further
fun.
questions. Listen to her. No,
No
this
further
was a lot of
questions.
fun. Really, we really appreciate it. And I love hearing about the work that you're doing and the way that you're taking an innovative approach to culture and to business and to changing the fucking world because that's what we need more of. So thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to clarify, I I'm getting introduced to the lawyer at Gesmer Updegrove,